take decision. How do the firms take decision? What to produce, how to produce, for whom to produce? How do they take decisions? By looking at what? Demand and supply, market forces. Last year, still now, there's a huge demand for the face mask. Then suppliers start supplying, selling, diverting the using their resources, investing their resources to produce, to sell, or bring the face mask to the market. Now you can see, now every road, by side of the road, there are lots of the face mask sellers, sellers of sanitizers. New economic activity. Sometimes middle class people are there. They have come by car and they open the small stall. They sell that 95 rupees, 60 rupees, 40 rupees for face mask. It has become a necessity in Sri Lankan case. Within 2 years' time, the items, main item, single item that has become a necessity for a household, for an individual, face mask, the head, the wipers, right, like that. That is firms. By using interaction between demand and supply, they take decisions. They decide allocation of resources. When there's higher demand in the particular sector for a particular product, they allocate their resources to produce that. When the demand is going down, they withdraw the resources from that. That is the decision-making process of the allocation of resource allocation process of the private sector, private companies. Government. How does the government allocate resources? They can't use demand supply forces.
Excuse me, sir. We can't see the presentation.
Oh, you can't see the presentation? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. How about now, my dear? Hello?
Yeah, okay, now.
Now
I can see.
Okay, good. Now this household, government and firms, we said there are about the 5 million households. Firms take decision about with regard to the allocation of the resources by using the demand supply forces, market forces. Now we said government is a one entity. Government cannot use demand and supply, market forces to allocate their resources. Government has some important document, okay, most important document, financial document, financial plan. According to that plan, government allocate their resources. This plan is called budget, government budget. Government budget. This plan is prepared for the coming year. Now this year, 2020 budget is coming usually in the normal years. Every year, the 6th of November, Honorable Finance Minister present the budget speech to the Parliament. That budget speech is for the coming year, future financial plan, 2022 financial plan. That is the main component. Before that, government take a stock taking procedure. What has happened to the 2021 budget? 2021 budget performances, there are revenue collections, revenue shortfalls, or the expenditure shortfalls. They discuss that percent. But mainly the budget is to the future period. Next period, November budget will be presented for the coming year, 2020. Year 2020. It's a resource allocation plan. Government has a fixed resource allocation plan at the beginning of the year, right? education, health, roadworks, then the public services, pensions, like that. They have initially at the beginning of the year they allocate resources. Allocate resources, then time by the quarterly or monthly or weekly, the Treasury, Finance Ministry, they release these resources to the relevant ministry, department, right? Okay. Who compile? The budget of the government is a planned estimate of the revenue and of the government expenditure for a given year, together with the financing plan on how a deficit is financed or a surplus is utilized. Given year means future year, next year, right? Given year, 2022, right? Financing plan, our deficit is, we have discussion about the revenue, discussion about the expenditure, discussion about the gap between revenue and expenditure, budget deficits or surplus. When there is a deficit, government has to indicate how are they going to fill the deficit, finance the deficit. Borrowing from where? Foreign, local. If it is local, bank, non-bank, financing plan. If there is a surplus is a dream for Sri Lanka, right? Except very few years in 1950s, 1 or 2 years, we had all the way, every year we have deficit. When there's surplus, how does the government utilize this surplus? Paying the debt, giving relief to the people, invest the surplus in government the projects, like that. So this is the discussion. This is the description of the budget: revenue, expenditure, deficit, financing of deficit. What is the government budget? Now this budget is, there is a 2018, this is older, this statement, 19 you didn't have a budget. Now 2020 you had the budget, right? This statement from the previous government, that budget is, I like this, the theme of the budget. Every budget has a theme, vision statement, you can say. Now the 2018 budget, the theme was blue-green budget. This is under the what do you call that? The previous government, right? When Honorable Maithripala Sirisena was the president and Ranil Wickremesinghe was the prime minister, Honorable Prime Minister, right? And that year, in that year, the first budget, no, yeah, second budget, the first budget. Honorable Minister Mangal Samaravira was the Mangal Samaravira. He presented his budget speech. Now, this was the theme of this budget speech. Blue-green budget, enterprise Sri Lanka. Very catchy, the theme, right? Mr. Speaker, I copied that from the speech where we have the very important points, medium-term plan, targets. Right? Mr. Speaker, I now present the budget 2018 under the theme of blue-green budget, the launch of enterprise Sri Lanka. It is blue. Why it is called blue? Because we plan to integrate the full economic potential of ocean. Related, the ocean is blue. Ocean-related activities in formulating the overall budget. Sri Lanka is a very lucky country. We have a budget. So if you can exploit using the latest technology, the ocean resources will be much richer than at present, right? There are various reasons, sometimes political, sometimes social, sometimes economical reasons why we can't get the full potential, exploit full potential, the exploitation of the resources, ocean resources, right? But their theme is this: it is green because we'll build our economy on an environmentally sustainable development strategy. That's very important, very interesting. The theme: green banking, greenhouse. Green is the new concepts without damaging to the environment, or consistent with the environment. We should people should implement their policies right? That is green, because we build our economy on an environmentally sustainable or the friendly development strategy. The enterprise Sri Lanka will reawaken the entrepreneurial spirit coming from our ancient forefathers, enabling Sri Lanka to be a vibrant trading hub and encouraging all Sri Lankans to become co-owners of a country, enriched, right? That is the enterprise Sri Lanka. This SMEs sector or the medium and small sector, at the same time big companies, we develop, give the incentives to develop, right? That is as a government, when what type of investment? Infrastructure development. Government, then emphasizing, implementing law and order, establishing required infrastructure. That was the main present world. That was the main role of the government, right? A long time ago, the government's objective was different. Theoretically, now these are the two key objectives. Right? Now, in this blue-green budget, targets. Every budget speech, you have the target, medium target, medium term, usually within 5 years, within 3 years, medium, long term, more than 3 years, more than 5 years. Right? Medium targets. Every budget you have the target. 2018, now this is 2020, 2 years time, right? So 2 years time. So medium term in 3 years time, right? They wanted to the per capita income of USD 5,000 at that time, as I can remember, 3,500 2018. They want to raise that to 5,000. Still, 2020, ours per capita income is around US dollar, closely about the 4,000, 3,900, closely about 5,000. 3 years time, 2018 to 21, 5,000 target. 1 million new jobs within 3 years. Nearly 33,000 jobs per year. 333,000 jobs per year. Nearly 1 million. FDI inflows USD 5 billion, 3 years. Doubling exports USD 20 billion. 2018, it was around 10 billion export value. Export value of exports was 10 billion. At that time, they have the target to raise that, to increase that to 20 billion, double exports. Still, we don't have double. We have around 12 billion, the 13, 14 billion exports, right? The imports double, 26 billion, nearly 30 billion. Imports double, export. That is one of the key problems in Sri Lanka. We are facing in the external sector of the country. The exports, earnings, most important, most crucial for the economic development is much less than our import expenditure. Half of the import expenditure. It is 26 billion, 13 billion, like that. Now, GDP growth rate of 5%. GDP growth rate, remember, our growth rate was falling 2.3, 1.7, like that. Then target was to raise that to 5%. Inflation was around 6%, around 7% inflation. They want to bring down the inflation to 6%. Budget deficit of 4.5% of GDP. Budget deficit is another key economic indicator. In Greece, when they had a crisis, long time ago, their budget deficit was around 12% of GDP. But at that time, government purposely reduced by manipulating the numbers, statistics. They showed that it is not 12%, it is around 7%, 8%. But economic performance, economy was deteriorating in Greece. Then what will happen? All of a sudden, the IMF or some other international organization found out that it was not 7%, 8%, it is 12%. Huge budget deficit. But here, our budget deficit now is not that so high, 6%, 5% rate. So they want to bring down the budget deficit to 4.5%. These are the targets. Every budget, when you read the budget speech, in the first session, there's a summary of budget speech sometimes. Please go through the budget speech. Sometimes most of the UW, the Chartered Accountant, Institute of Chartered Accountants, they have seminars. If you have time, you can attend that seminar. Sometimes they are free of charge. Right? Just go and listen to budget deficit, budgetary policies. Right? These are the targets. Now you can say still we have not achieved any of these targets. GDP 3%, exports much less than 20 million. So the 20 billion like that, right? Because of this shock came no? After 2020 March, the period on 19 December onwards, we had the external unanticipated shock. Everything was disrupted. That's why this is one of the reasons we couldn't achieve that target. Now let's see the please see the read this November budget. What the government will be telling, right, about the economy, about the targets, about their policies, right? Okay. Now to achieve those targets, now these are, even though this is a 2018 budget, every budget, these are general structure target, then the development strategy. There are development strategies to achieve those targets. Import tax on electric cars will be reduced at least 1 million by 1 million. Electric cars. Electric cars. Why is that? What is the purpose? Encourage people to use more and more electric cars. Environmentally friendly, without diesels. Only electricity, source of for the energy is electricity. So that's why they reduce. They are expected to reduce the electric car import tax. Import tax on diesel cars increase by almost 2.5 million. Discourage use of diesel cars. Now this policy, the strategy is consistent with the object of the government budget at that time, green budget, environmental friendly budget. Import tax on diesel 3-wheelers will be increased by 50,000. 50 electric buses will be introduced to SLTV bus fleet. Environmental friendly policy. Private bus operators will be incentivized to go electric. Incentives to the use of off-grid solar power. Environmental friendly policy. Waste disposal management initiative will be continued. Groundwater monitoring will continue to ensure purity and safety of water. These are the strategies. Right? Now, these strategies, when you decide strategies, this strategy should be consistent with your theme, green budget. Basically, green budget to give the encourage green environmental friendly policies, you have to discourage diesel consumption. Encourage electric cars, electric 3-wheelers, right? Solar powered 3-wheelers, solar powered cars if possible, right? These are the things. Now, recently I saw one of the posts in the FB, the driverless car. China has now already tested no driver. Driver going on. You can call this cab is coming, doorstep. You get in. Actually, lady was there. In that case, that's a demonstration. I stopped at all the red at the color lights. Then again, sensitive to the people crossing the walking through the crossings, everything. So it's a driverless cars, new concept, right? Driverless cars. In US also, they are the research being conducted. Now China, they have introduced this car. Please go to the web and check driverless car produced by China. That's a very interesting the demonstration, right? Okay. So they are environmental policy, environmentally friendly policy. What institutions are covered? Now we'll go to the real stuff. Budget. What is budget? Who compile budget? What is the frequency of compiling the budget? Right? What institutions are covered in the budget? All government ministries, departments, statutory boards, which are directly controlled by the General Treasury. You can see no private sector institutions. Yeah. All government ministries, departments, statutory boards, which are directly controlled by the General Treasury. Who is responsible for the preparation of the budget? Not the central bank, not the Ministry of Health, right? Not the Ministry of Agriculture, the Ministry of Finance, MOF, supported by the, there's the duplication, cut this Ministry of Finance again, the General Treasury and the Central Bank. Ministry of Finance, supported by the General Treasury and the Central Bank. Treasury is coming under Ministry of Finance and the Central Bank, right? Central Bank prepare the confidential report, they evaluate the economy, sometimes they give the policies to be implemented, policy proposal to be implemented to the Treasury, Ministry of Finance. Again, Minister get views and request opinions, views from the other stakeholders economy. Lowest level, maybe three-wheel drivers, teachers, gem exporters, other traders, SME sector institution. Minister of Finance, Minister call meetings with them, discussions with them, and get their proposals as well. Central Bank send their proposals. Minister himself, Minister of Finance, arrange meetings and get their views and opinion. Then again, Minister of Finance collect information from government institutions, government department, ministries about their requirement, their investment plans, financial requirement. Then, using all these things, they prepare the budget and the budget proposal. Budget proposals definitely coming from the central bank and the discussions, outcome of these discussions, right? Sometimes these stakeholders might ask tax reduction, giving the credit concessions, right? Investment concessions, removing some exchange control regulations, right? So like these are the overall budget proposals are coming. Then the government, Ministry of Finance, the Treasury prepare the budget speech. That is the budget speech that is printed in all three languages. That is the one that presented by the Ministry of Finance on 6th of November in every year, generally. There is a budget. Budget has to be approved by the Parliament. Parliamentary members. That is in our Constitution, that is one of the basic fundamental requirements. Government budget should be approved by the Parliament in majority voting system. If not, what will happen? If not, government is defeated. Government has to dissolve the Parliament and go for a new election. Why is that? What is the logic behind this? It's a big decision if they are defeated. What is the logic? Because budget has to be approved by the Parliament. Parliamentary members are elected by us, by the people of the country. So therefore, when you say budget has to be approved by the parliamentary members, mean budget has to be approved by the general public. You can't go each and every week and go and cast our votes. No. It is people's budget. People, they has to be approved by, people should approve the budget, government financial plan. If not, if it is not, if they are defeated, government has to come again to the people and ask for a new mandate. Sometimes people might not give that mandate. Okay? So that requirement has a strong, very strong logic. Budget has to be approved by the people. Why is the budget so important in the economy? Now, economics of budget. The government budget is important because in any economy, think about any economy, USA, China, Malaysia, Singapore, the Maldives, the government is the largest single income earner and the spending unit. Largest single income earner and the spending unit. Largest single. If you take government budget expenses, trillions, rupees trillion, 2 trillion, 3 trillion. No private sector institution has that budget. To take MAs, Brandix, big companies, nothing. Government is the largest single income earner and the spending need. So therefore, there has a huge impact on the economy. Government behavior, budget has huge impact on the economy. Therefore, we should study, carefully study, carefully study. You have to have separate the speech, separate document, separate plan for the budget. In Sri Lanka, government's total revenue amounts to about 14.2% of the gross domestic product, GDP, while the expenditure amounts 19.7% of GDP. CBSL AR 16, Central Bank annual report 16. These are the percentages. 14.2, you can go to the GDP, how many billions, how many trillions, then get the 14.2% of that. Then you can see revenue how much. Again, billions, trillions. You can go to the GDP, get the GDP and calculate 19.7%, then you can see expenditure. Huge. Since the government consumes a large percentage of income, its policies have a direct bearing on the economy. In this context, the government budget and its budgetary of fiscal policies have an important place in the economy. Now we have important term, fiscal policy. There are two types of economic policies, monetary policy, fiscal policy. Monetary policy is proposed, implemented, then the supervised, authorized by the central bank. Fiscal policies are proposed and implemented by the government or mainly Ministry of Finance. Pressure, fiscal policies. Right? Fiscal policy is an conscious policy taken by the government to change the level of structure of the revenue, government revenue, expenditure of the government, and the method of financing budget deficit or utilizing the budget surplus. Government, when there's a deficit, government can, to finance the deficit, government can borrow. So deficit is always, deficit financing is from borrowing. Government can borrow money from the domestic sources on the foreign sources. Foreign loans, foreign grants. Domestic loans, grants is usually not there. Foreign loans. Foreign loans, banking loans, banking sector borrowings, bank borrowings, non-bank borrowings, like that. So financing, these policies related to this financing also coming under fiscal policy. Government expenditure policies. Government increase the expenditure, increase salaries and wages of the teachers, engineers, government employees. Then increase government investment expenditure. Policies related to this, all coming under fiscal policy. But the fiscal policy has an impact on GDP, has an impact on interest rate, structure of the economy. That is important. Aggregate demand of the economy, where you see Y equals C plus I plus G plus X minus M. GDP depends on G. When government increases the expenditure, consumption or investment expenditure, GDP increases. Like that, there's a direct relationship between government behavior and the GDP. Fiscal policy and GDP. Right? Okay. Now these days, we should discuss these issues, right? Now you may have read the social media as well as newspapers, some media, the channels. There's a huge issue about the tax on sugar, right? Then what was the issue? The government reduced tax from 50 rupees to 25 cents. 25 cents. But the government has authority to manipulate, change the tax structure. Objective of the tax structure is so different, giving relief to the people, no general citizens, affect the price level of the good product, then reduce that. No, government, when they reduce, their revenue will decrease, will go down. Government revenue. What will happen? That's the thing. Then the people, opposition argue there is a fraud, but government say there is no fraud. Treasury defended their policies. Opposition political parties offensive. We don't know who is right, who is wrong, but that's another issue with regard to fiscal policy decision. Fiscal policy decision. Right? How is the budget prepared? You know, Minister of Finance, there's a central bank, third party, Minister of Finance. The central bank submits a special confidential report to the Minister of Finance before the 30th September of every year, giving details of the performance of the current in the current year, prospects for the next year, and the likely developments in the budgetary scenario settled next year. Central bank report, confidential report, September 15th report. Now it is called red, right? Report. Then the report on economic development, right? It goes to directly to the Minister of Finance. It's a very comprehensive report. Next year growth rate, next year inflation rate, next year the money supply changes, then the next year investment scenario, private investment, FDI scenario, all are included. Real sector, the growth, agriculture performance, various commodities. Then the budget also, they are budgetary scenario, next year budgetary scenario. They propose that and some of the policies. Send that policy to the Treasury. That is one component. Another component is discussions, opinions, views coming from stakeholders of the budget. People, group of people, group of private sector employees, organizations, unions, right? Coming from that. Then the ministry itself collect data on the past performance, last year performance, last year income, expenditure, investment performance, and the coming year. Budget is for the coming year, 2020. Coming year, they are expected the investment proposal. How many bridges, how many roads to be renovated, newly roads, how many railway stations to be constructed. So if they have the monorail, the project now, monorail, the project was abandoned, right? If there are new large-scale proposal, airport, the development proposals, right? Get this information also. So bank report, opinions, views, ministry, revenue and expenditure collection, past and the future. Based on this report, the General Treasury will prepare the budget with budgeted proposal, which have to be approved by the cabinet before being presented to the parliament. First to the cabinet, cabinet of ministers, they approved, but that is on principle they agreed. But the crucial point is the parliament. Parliament should approve the budget. We should approve the budget. People should approve the budget. That is a good job. Cabinet of ministers can approve. That's not enough. Right? In that, the cabinet minister, in that discussion, they say, one of the ministers might say, okay, I need more resources. Right? I have these type of projects, these resources are not enough. But initially, they produce the resource plan. This kind of discussion, internal discussion, internal reallocations can be done. But Parliament should approve. After that, the parliament adopts once the parliament approves, they adopt the budget by giving authority to a Minister of Finance and other relevant spending agencies to incur expenditure for the purpose of the budget out of the consolidated fund. Now, once it approved, then Ministry of Finance issued regulations, revise necessary tax policy taxations, then ask England Revenue Department to implement these policies, start sticking to these new policies, collecting new revenue, new proposal, right? The coming year. That's how we budget. Central bank also stakeholder, other stakeholders, Ministry of Finance, collect, prepare the budget, first approved by the cabinet. Next, necessary requirement to get the parliament approval. Generally, if the government has the majority definitely budget is approved. But in some cases, budget can be defeated. Right. What are the main type? Now we have in the budget we have the revenue, expenditure, then deficit. Now we'll discuss gradually. Now we are going into the budget, more micro level. What are the main types of expenditure in the budget? Current expenditure, capital expenditure. Capital expenditure generally more than one lifetime, lifespan more than 1 year. Recurrent expenditure considering all expenses for services with a lifespan 1 year or less, and capital expenditure incurred for the acquisition of assets with a lifespan more than 1 year. Government acquire assets, roads, school buildings, prisons, hospitals. Once they built, universities sometimes. If the government institutions have a new investment project, government acquire. Yeah, government own assets, acquisition of assets, investment. Lifespan less than 1 year. Monthly salaries of teachers, expenditure. Salaries of the doctors, engineers. Government, less than 1 year. Then more than 1 year, investment, capital expenditure. Roads, hospitals, schools, like that. Acquisition of assets. Assets could be financial or real assets. Government can acquire real assets. Government can acquire financial assets as well. Excuse me. Excuse me. What are the sources of revenue? Please read that. Source of revenue. What are the sources of revenue? Tax, non-tax. But the interesting thing is, government as an institution is a lazy institution, as a unit. The government live on other people's money. In layman's language. What does that mean? Other people's money mean taxes. Live on taxes. To tax companies. tax individuals, tax households, or non-tax revenue. Non-tax revenue. Railway department, postal department, the earnings should be transferred to the government treasury. They can't use that money to the consolidated funds. Then you might ask how they are paid salaries. No, the railway and the postal, they can't use their own earnings. Consolidated funds, through the consolidated fund, they should get their salaries. Get the revenue. Because at the beginning, government they allocate the resources to the railway this much. The salaries and wages, their investment. At the beginning, you have the account, vote. From that, you get your salaries and wages. But the earnings, all the earnings should be transferred to the consolidated funds. Tax department, the Inland Revenue Department, then the customs, government revenue, government railways, postal department, all. They can't use these funds. Their earnings, annual earnings, all should come to this one. Through the consolidated funds, they can get their expenses. So two main sources, tax revenue and non-tax revenue. Tax revenue in Sri Lanka amounts to about 15% of GDP. Now I want you to calculate this rupee value of this 15%. Please go to the national accounts table, my presentation. There's a GDP, current factor cost GDP, how many trillions. Calculate 15% of GDP and check how many trillions of these taxes, how many billions. While non-tax revenue amounts to about 2%, of non-tax is 2% of GDP, the 15% taxes. The main source of taxation in Sri Lanka is the taxes on goods and services. Goods and services, BTT, sales taxes, right? They are called indirect taxes. Direct taxes, corporate taxes. So taxes, again, you divide into two. Taxes, indirect taxes and the direct taxes. Direct taxes mean tax on people, tax on households, tax on companies, corporate taxes. Indirect taxes, all goods and services, taxes on goods and services. Non-tax revenue, the largest component consists of the profit transferred by the central bank to the government, not only other government institutions also. Budget, largest component, but other institutions should also transfer. Taxation, direct, indirect. Direct, corporate taxes, household taxes, indirect taxes, goods and services tax. Now that's interesting, the division of direct and indirect. I have a question. Which component is higher of the total tax revenue? Which is higher, direct taxes or indirect taxes? Tell me. Direct or indirect tax? Sorry?
Indirect tax.
Indirect tax. About how much? Direct, indirect? Yes, direct, indirect? Yes. 80-20? 80-20? 20 direct, indirect the 80?
Yes.
Yes. 80-20, roughly about 80-20. Direct, indirect division. It's a very interesting point. In Sri Lankan case, indirect 80% of the total tax revenue, let's say direct 20% of the total tax revenue. But in developed countries, Australia, US, Japan, it is completely other way around. There's 20-80, 20-80, 80 direct, 20 indirect. 80-20 will become 20-80 in developed countries. So everything is tax in developed countries. If you are getting free meal from your institutions, company, it is tax. Free uniform, it is tax. Free transport, it is tax. Right? Everything is tax. But there are indirect taxes, price levels, Prices of goods and services. Indirect taxes low. Direct, indirect. So therefore, because of the direct tax, therefore people are concerned in developed countries. People are concerned about their taxes, paying taxes. They think these are our money. These are taxpayers' money. These developed countries, Australia, US, people directly say, government, don't do that. Be careful when you spend. This is taxpayers' money because we are paying 80% of the tax to your budget. We contribute 80%. More than that. Be careful. They can do that. There are interesting example for that one. Even government ministers can't play out the government funds. Now in New Zealand, once one of the lady ministers take an official trip to London, official trip, financed by the government budget. Air travel, ticket, hotel accommodation, other miscellaneous items financed by the government, perfectly correct. Then from that, London, she flight to Scotland, then came back to New Zealand. London to the Scotland trip is private. Then people ask question: who finance? How do you find the money to fly to London to Scotland? Your expenses. Who finance? Minister, this lady minister has to accept these are government funds. What is the result? She resigned. She had to resign. Right? Up to that point, taxpayers, peoples are very strong in those countries. The reason is what? 80-20 ratio, taxpayers' money. But we all are taxpayers. We are paying 80% indirect taxes, goods and indirect. We don't pay direct taxes. So, but we are not concerned about our taxes. We are not worried. We go and buy things from the supermarket, dal, sugar, oil, petrol, other consumer items. So everything is taxed. We are taxpayers, indirect taxpayers, not the direct taxpayers. Teachers are not paying taxes. Government employees, most of the government employees are exempted from paying taxes. They never pay tax. They are not in the tax base. At the same time, we are paying indirect taxes. We are not concerned about it. We don't want government. But those countries, they want, people want to go. There are lots of examples. Then the Steffi Graf. You may not have this name because in our time, maybe 1980s, 85, 86 period, the badminton, tennis champion, lady champion was Steffi Graf, French, France. No, he's from France here. The Steffi Graf. He won lots of this games, right? Okay. And Steffi Graf's father was the tax consultant. He prepared all the tax returns because these players are earning millions of dollars. Messi's the contract with the Spanish, one of the Spanish football, the club is around 300 million. Huge contracts. So they are earning huge money. They are paying huge money to the government. Then tax consultant was Steffi Graf. His father was the tax consultant. He was jailed all of a sudden. Why that? Avoidance of paying taxes, underestimation of paying taxes. Direct avoiding tax, evasion of taxes. Then that was the case. Father was jailed. Very strong. The legal requirements are there. You have to pay taxes. You can't avoid. You can evade paying taxes. That is also their legal system also very strong. But in most of developing countries, people can avoid taxes, evade taxes. There are some professionals or the you can go and various the institutions are there. You can do that, right? But you calculation the procedures are there, no? Right? Anyway, but these are the example. Taxpayers' money. Taxpayers are very strong in developed countries, whereas our country, we all are taxpayers, but we are not concerned about it. Because these are some examples. Direct versus indirect, 80, 20, 20, 80. A direct tax is a tax where the burden of the tax is borne by the taxpayer himself. Direct tax. If I am a taxpayer, I have to compile return. My tax return should produce and calculate all the income and pay the tax to the government, the Inland Revenue Department himself. Since there is no possibility for him to shift it to another person, income tax, wealth tax. I can't ask my friend to pay my tax. I can't pass the burden. Tax is a burden. We don't like, no one like paying taxes. Why is that? When you pay taxes, suppose your income is 50,000. If you pay tax out of that, if you pay 1,000 rupees to the government, your income will be 49,000. Disposable income decreases. After tax income decreases. Your earnings, you surrender the purchasing power to the government. 1,000 rupee worth of purchasing power to the government. You don't like that. Then it's a burden. But the burden in the case of direct tax, this burden cannot be passed on to another party. Direct taxes. But indirect taxes, traders, suppliers, sellers, companies can pass their burden to the individuals, consumers, by way of increasing price. They do. The sale tax increases, they do that. Right? If for example, during this harvesting period, sometimes government impose tax on the potatoes, tax on the onion, because just to give some relief to the government, they make the foreign the imports the expensive by imposing taxes. Right? When they impose taxes, in the prices of imported onions, imported potatoes will be higher. Then compared to local products, they will be expensive. People start buying more local products. Something like that. When there's a tax, traders pass their burden to the individual consumer. But direct taxes, you cannot pass. An indirect tax is a tax where the taxpayer is in a position to shift the burden of the tax to someone else. Someone else means consumers. Tax is collected from one person, but the burden is eventually borne by another person. Turnover taxes, sales taxes, goods and services tax, import duties, export duty, import duties, tax. Right? So you can restrict imports by imposing taxes, or you can impose restrict import direct regulations. Import duties indirect regulation, market-based regulation. Direct regulation, no essential imports. After COVID, post-COVID period, government issues circular, no essential imports. That is a direct regulation. Then customs, getting some the HS codes, numbers, these items should not, you should not allow these items to be imported. Banks are getting that list. So when a person come and try to open the car sale, he come and open LC to bring second-hand cars from Japan. They are not allowed to open that LC. Restricted. There are lots of grievances are there. Now the car importers are now complaining. They don't have any the activities, trades at all. They are being cornered. So government is getting some pressure from these importers of this special vehicle. Because that activity is not the import, even though when you import something, our foreign exchange going out. So government objective is to stop this draining out of foreign exchange, valuable reserves, dollar reserves. but it is an economic activity. See, a car sale, how many workers are there? They provide employment. So there are huge economic activity. Domestically, lots of people depend on that economic activity. But that is the conflict. When you impose this kind of restrictions, that activity shrinks. Employment shrinks. They cannot hire new people, their profit shrinks. But government's idea is to stop draining out of foreign exchange. Government always think about that because about the reserve level. Our reserves, foreign reserves were around $8 billion, $6 billion. Now it has come down to around 4 to 5 billion. It is coming down. Huge problem. Reserves because of this COVID. Right? Export earnings are falling. Because reserves, export earnings coming from export earnings. That the reserves are coming from other countries, export earnings. Then Middle East earnings. Middle East people earn their money. They earn money sent to the country. 8 billion. Now Middle East employment has gone down. Right? No Middle East earnings. So this is the source of foreign exchange, remittances, has come down. Then our resources have come down. At the same time, if you allow imports to come into economy, our draining out of reserves. Government has to decide at one point or other. Government has to decide something. Now we all are purely discussing economics. You should be able to argue these things. Read this. When the government imposes a policy, you have to justify. Why is that? Justify. Reason out. Why? What is the reasons? Don't go by judgments or your own judgments. Sometimes there are lots of paper articles, the media discussions, and some are biased, some are unbiased. But you should be able to think of it's a good policy or bad policy. What is the rationale of imposing these tax policy? Stopping the non-essential imports to the country, right? Then only you can judge. But don't go by the own judgments. There are lots of, if you go to the social media, huge discussion, huge criticisms. Okay, you just stop that, all these things. Think about the economics of that. These social media, there are people, they have very good arguments, they do reasoning out. But first you have to understand the rationale. Then you can see for and against. We all have our opinions, own opinions, right? That's thing. Deforestation is bad. Everybody agrees. The degradation of environment is bad. You all agree. Those things are. Yeah. Then taxation, reduction of taxes. Government's argument is okay. Government say we are the authority of the change in taxes. Our objective is to give some relief to the consumers. When you cut taxes, price should come down. Price of sugar should come down in the market. If it is not, some administrative problem. Government has not implement, tax department has not implement the activities, implement the regulations, right? Something like that. Then the problem is, government has the authority to manipulate, change tax policy. So that to protect consumers or protect farmers, sometimes government impose taxes. Tax on potatoes, tax on big onions, imported big onion. That is government's baby. Then the opposition asks, what has happened to this money? Huge loss to the government budget. Then that's another argument. Arguments are there. Understand these cases, but the government's argument is clear. You have the authority. Very clear. Your health department cannot manipulate taxes, no? Hospitals cannot manipulate taxes. Education department can't do it. Only Minister of Finance has the authority. Then think about those things, taxation. Right. Direct versus indirect. Direct taxes, tax burden cannot be passed on to another individual. Indirect taxes, tax burden can be passed on to another individual or group of individuals by way of increasing or decreasing prices. Which form of taxation is more important in Sri Lanka? In Sri Lanka, direct taxes. We said 80, no? 78, I have calculated this from 2016 annual report, 78% of tax revenue, while balance is generated by indirect tax, 78, by that is 22%. That's why I said we use 80-20, no? Developed countries, 80 direct, 20 indirect. In Sri Lanka, actually indirect 80, direct 20. 78%. Yes. You can calculate that. The following are the reason for the low percentage of direct taxes. Excuse me. Please read this. Please read this. Why we can't increase direct taxes from 20 to 30%, 40%? Now people that are very the cheap argument is there. Okay, why do tax these direct indirect taxes? Government every time the impose taxes. Tax on alcohol, tax on cigarette, tax on vegetables, tax on the imported items, consumer goods. Right? Why can't they increase the direct taxes? So they are huge. Corporate taxes or the household taxes, individual taxes. Now these are the arguments. The following are the reason for the low percentage of direct tax revenue in Sri Lanka. Low per capita income, which exempts the majority of people from income tax. That is the reason. Almost all government employees have been exempted from paying taxes. They are not in the tax base. Tax base, that is the tax base consists of all those who pay taxes. But the government employees are not in the tax base. Developed countries is not the case. Everybody pay taxes. Everybody pay taxes. But recently, this government they introduced a policy to bring all these non-tax payers to the tax base. They had to open the tax file. That is the reason. Low per capita income, at the same time exempted. So majority of the people are exempted from the income tax pay. Right? The thing is, now they can say, they can argue our salaries are very low. Out of this, we can't pay taxes. Agreed. But the thing is, when they pay their direct taxes to the government, somehow or other, compensating effect is government should reduce indirect taxes. Tax on goods and services. Understand? So therefore, by doing that, government give the relief to the people. To bring government employees to the tax net, they are asked to pay taxes. Direct taxes increases. Now, what is the government has a responsibility? If they bring them into tax net, cut down the tax on sugar, cut down the tax on the dal, cut down the tax on flour, like that. Then price level coming down, these people are getting the benefit. That argument is correct. Salaries 40,000, 50,000, the low pensions, the low salaries, you can't pay taxes out of that money. Yeah, that's right. But government has to act both sides. Once they bring their into tax net, cut down the indirect tax. Number two, low level of money economy so that a large percentage of income earned in kind cannot be taxed. Free uniform, free meal, free transport, right? So these are the benefits that government employees, some of the government institutions give to the people, right? Then you cannot tax that. Money economy is low. Monetary, salary, take home pay, your rupee money, income. You are getting some other income in kind. Then the new tax policy, under new tax policy, if you are getting the medical benefits from the institution, if you are getting monthly medical bill, if your institution reimburse 5,000 rupee worth of medical bills, that 5,000 is considered as an income of the individual when they calculate income tax. At the moment, it is not the case. You are getting the benefit. You are not paying taxes. Those are getting your take-home pay, money salary, money income, and the indirect income. If the government is going to get them to tax base, you have to add those two. Money income and income in kind, and calculate total income. Most of the developing countries, this kind of income in kind benefits you are getting. So the developed countries, if you are getting that benefit, you have to add that to your income and when you calculate the taxes. Number two, exemption and income in kind. Number three, the tax machinery is not capable of covering all the potential taxpayers. Potential taxpayers are there, but the tax administrative problem, it is the administration. Tax administration is should be efficient to get taxes from all the potential taxpayers. This is not the new people getting the tax base. They are there. Taxpayers are there, but the institution, IRD, Internal Department, should get that get their money, taxes, increase efficiency. Sometimes they might need more people, more the tax officers, ground level workers. Then the next administrative level worker, their staff shortages are there. They might not have computers. Right? Then again, the latest thing is the online payment. But most of the developed countries, these tax systems, the taxes are paid online. You have the template. You have your own template. You download the template. Then you calculate your enter, surrender, send that to save and send. Tax department get that. They do the calculation. Compare that with the previous year. Sometimes they query. The interesting thing is, sometimes these people in development, they are getting rebates, returns, rebates also. That is interesting. They calculate, okay, this the individual has paid more to this one. Then sometimes individual can claim, I have paid last year, I paid this much of money, more taxes. Please reimburse that. This kind of dialogue is going there. But in Sri Lanka, it's extremely difficult to get all potential taxpayers to the tax net, new people to the tax net. These are the issues, right? Efficiency issues of the tax department, staff shortages, the other infrastructure facilities are not there, computers are not there, these things. Right. Consequently, the direct tax revenue in Sri Lanka is much below the potential tax revenue. These are the reasons. If someone asks, someone argue with you, Why can't the government increase the direct tax rates? These are the reasons. These are the reasons. Therefore, government, easy way out. What is easy way out? Indirect taxes. Increasing the taxes. Easy way out is that. Right. What would be the ideal tax rate for a country? This is a theoretical question. Right? A tax is a compulsory transfer from the private sector to the government. We surrender our part of our, if you are a taxpayer surrender part of your purchasing power to the government. Income 50,000. You pay 1,000 to the government. 1,000 rupee worth of purchasing power has been surrendered to the government. That is a tax. Transfer. Compulsory transfer. Government say pay that tax. Compulsory transfer of the purchasing power. Private sector means not only the companies, individuals also, to the government. Hence, to the extent of the tax paid, the private sector has to sacrifice resources. Your purchasing power, real income goes down. Disposable income decreases if the government imposes taxes. Nominal income 50,000. Disposable income 49,000 after taxing. In such situation, high tax revenues measured as ratio of GDP will always have a disincentive effect on work, income generation, output creation. Yes, tax is a disincentive. We don't like taxes. That's another interesting thing about tax revenue. Now, if you have a car, you pay license fee. Then the other types of mainly license. You take the license revenue license. This money, 1,000 rupees, 2,000 rupees, even for a bike, motorbike, 3-wheelers, light vehicles, heavy vehicles, all are tax. All pay these taxes to the government. It's a huge part of the money. Right? These are taxes. But what is every tax has an objective. Objective of tax, these tax money should be used to improve the road network, facilities, infrastructure facilities of the vehicle users. Correct argument. That won't happen. Government get this money, pool this money to the consolidated funds, then time put in the allocate. Sometimes you know that in some rural areas, villages, road quality very bad. Road quality is very bad. But you pay revenue license. Revenue license. You have the right to ask government to maintain the road network. Because we are paying money. Right? Well, these are the interesting points you have to discuss. Why do we pay this tax? Why do we pay these taxes? Even for a bike, you pay taxes. Theoretically, there should be a connection. On average, they maintain the roads are carpeted. Then the sewage facilities, they maintain sewage facilities. The network, that's right. That is that. But in some cases, some roads, some villages, you can't do that. Right? Okay. Consequently, government should not try to tax too heavily its people. It's a discourage effect. For instance, any tax ratio above 50. Now, these numbers you don't worry about. 50% of GDP may do harm than benefit to the economy. Tax rate, GDP of tax ratio, 50% of GDP. In this context, the ideal tax ratio may be 25% since Sri Lanka tax revenue stands 12% of GDP. That's a great potential for, at present, tax revenue is 12% up. So therefore, that's a huge potential, the government to raise taxes, tax revenue, direct taxes or indirect taxes. Very huge tax ratio, very big tax ratio, disincentive, people don't work. Then there's a curve called Laffer curve. Laffer curve. I will draw this Laffer curve. We go to the board. Just want to go to the board, of course. Sorry. Can you see the board now? Hello? Can you see the board? Hello?
Yes.
Can you see the board?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, right, okay. Now the Laffer curve. Laffer curve is this. Professor Laffer, the one of the consultant to one of the advisors to the President Reagan, I think, yeah, the US President, right? Late President Reagan. After that, yes, one of these. But he drew this curve. Laffer curve is like this. Tax rate, tax revenue. Tax revenue. It's a curve. Shape is this. %, 0%. Tax revenue. What will happen? That's the maximum point. At that tax rate, revenue is maximized. Max. Tax revenue is maximized. Right? This is the tax rate. Tax rate 0. Government tax rate 0 means what? Tax revenue 0. If there is no taxes at all, private companies or individuals are taxed at 0%, you need not to pay tax, 0. Government tax revenue 0. If the tax rate is 100%, think about that. Your income 50,000, tax rate is 100%. What is the government tax revenue? You have to pay all 50,000 to the government. Tax rate 100%. Take home pay 0. 100%. Nobody will work. Government tax revenue again 0. Understand? If the tax rate is zero, government doesn't get any money. If tax rate is 100%, again government doesn't get money because nobody will work. There is no incentive to work. So using these 2 points, Professor Laffer drew this curve. That's why he argued that as optimal tax rate that maximizes government tax revenue. If the current tax rate is this point, here, if you increase that tax rate, what will happen? Government revenue will go down. If you increase, government revenue will go down. If the current tax rate is to the right of optimal tax rate and government increase that tax rate, government revenue gradually will go down. If the current tax rate is here, then when government increase that, government revenue will increase that tax rate, government revenue will go up. Right? Now this is a very, very interesting curve. The Professor Laffer has an interesting story. Draw this curve on. He went for dinner with one of his the friends that the restaurant. He drew this, got this the Soviet and drew that curve. Then he argued that. So it is important to decide optimal tax rate. If you are to the right of optimal tax rate, there is no point of increasing that rate. Government revenue will come down. If current tax rate is to the left, yes, then by increasing the tax rate, you can get higher revenue. This is a Laffer curve. Laffer curve, right? Okay. Then the question is the Reagan administration, they were of the view that current tax rate is to the right of the optimal tax rate. Then these advisors, they said, okay, cut taxes, cut tax rates, give tax relief, cut tax rate means then government get higher revenue. That was their advice. Reagan government cut taxes, huge reduction in taxes, corporate taxes, household taxes, personal taxes. What is the argument? Laffer curve. They were assuming this is the optimal tax rate, T star. They were assuming that the economy is running on to the right of the tax rate is to the right. Therefore, there's no point of increasing taxes, cut taxes to get the higher revenue. Policy was there, policy didn't work. Policy didn't work. Government, the tax revenue didn't increase. Theoretically, they expected that to go up. That didn't. Reason is either their initial assumption is wrong. Initial assumption is wrong because the country is not to the right of the optimal point, to the left. Therefore, cutting taxes mean government revenue will go down. That thing. Other thing is the analysis is correct, but people avoid paying taxes, do something else. Right? They don't get the, they get the benefit, they don't consume. They might save this money, right? If they get the benefit, they save money. GDP doesn't increase, right? So that's the thing that Reagan, that policy failed. They didn't get the expected revenue growth in the government budget. Then they abandoned that thing, right? Okay. Laffer curve, inverted U-shaped curve. You should be able to explain, this was one of the questions in the past papers, right? Explain what is Laffer curve and explain the implication, right? So optimal tax rate. How to decide optimal tax rate? 3%, 30%, 80% is very difficult. Difficult task. You have to do lots of analysis, research. What are the major accounts in the government budget? Yeah. Type. Two accounts, the current and capital account. The current account consists of all the current expenditure and the total revenue of the government. The difference between the two is known as the current account balance. Current account balance. Current account balance. Within bracket, take down that is called government savings, public savings. Government savings or public savings. Government savings, right? Current account balance. How do you calculate current account balance? Revenues, total government revenue minus current expenditure. Not the total expenditure. Total revenue minus total expenditure is the budget deficit or surplus. But in this case, total revenue minus current expenditure, only you get government savings, current account balance. But in Sri Lankan case, it is negative. Government doesn't save at all. Current account balance is negative. Revenue minus current expenditure is the government savings. Government savings, right? This balance represents extent to which government would generate savings or dis-savings. In Sri Lankan case, government tax savings negative, current account balance is negative. The savings in the government budget. Any surplus in the current account is a situation where the government has savings in its budget operation. The deficit, on the other hand, is a situation on dis-savings, right? Now there's an argument here. Should the government save or dis-save? Save or dis-save? If you say save, why? Why should the government save? If you save, dis-save, why? What does that imply? Dis-savings implies what? Current account. You give higher salaries to the teachers, engineers, doctors. Then you hire the transfer payments, samurdhi payments high, free textbooks, distribution of free textbooks high. So these are expenses high. Transfer payments, salaries and wages, loan repayments, loan interest payments will be high. Especially transfer payments, salaries and wages will be high. That's good actually. People are getting the benefit. Very. This savings does not necessarily imply it is bad. Again, savings does not necessarily imply it is good. In the case of government, they are dealing with people, government employees. When the government employees are getting more and more salaries, when the people, households are getting more and more transfer payments, samurdhi payment, free textbooks, the other pension payments, they're happy. They spend, they maintain to increase the aggregate demand. That is one type of analysis. So savings does not imply it is good. Dis-savings does not imply it is bad. In the case of government, but in the private sector, individuals, households, we can say the same argument you can apply, but savings is good, the savings bad, long term. The savings bad, savings good, right? Even in Sri Lankan case, right? But we save, good. Government case, you don't have very strong argument to justify dis-savings and savings. Should the government save? Should the government dis-save? Right? That's it. Right. Why is surplus in the current account important for the government? Surplus, current account balance. They ask why it is important. Since a surplus represents government savings, such savings can be utilized by the government to finance its capital expenditure or to reduce outstanding debt. Now, these are pluses. Why? If there is a surplus in the current account, you can use those money to finance the capital expenditure, government investment. Number one. Or if there are the surplus in the current account or government save, you can use this money to settle the debt, outstanding debt. There are two things. Think about your household, individual household. If you have savings of 1 million, what can you do? This 1 million. Either you can invest. I mean, in the real investment. You get the real assets, extension, buy some jewelry, gold, using that 1 million. Or you can keep that, start an FD, financial investment, and getting the interest. These days, people are not going for that kind of banking FDs. FD rates are going down around 4%, 5%, right? 1 million, either using 1 million, you can earn the FD, or using 1 million, you can buy real assets. If you can buy a small plot of land to purchase, to extend your current the area purchasing premises, or get an extension, right? Or the buy gold. Third one is you can use this 1 million to settle the past debt. Like that, even government can do. If they have savings in the current account, either they can invest, finance the capital expenditure, or they can they can settle, reduce the outstanding debt, or government can buy some financial assets. If they are savings, you can buy for the bonds issued by the US government, Fed. Government can do that. You can buy those bonds, investment, or you can buy debentures issued by the one of the banks, private banks. Government can do that. Government can decide. Or you should buy some others in the People's Bank, Bank of Ceylon, if they have debentures, right? Savings, investment, or the settlement of outstanding debt. This is yeah, they have discussed. This is similar to an individual savings, a part of income, and using it for acquisition of assets, extension, gold, buying gold, which would give him higher earnings in the future or settle his debt. Or you can buy some financial assets, real assets of finance, start an FD. Same thing, same argument is applicable to the government as well. In Sri Lanka, the government's current account has been in deficit in most of the years. Even if it is in surplus, such surpluses have been as low 1 or 2% of GDP. Current account means government savings. Government savings. Revenue minus current expenditure. If revenue minus all total expenditure, budget deficit. This indicates that the entirety of the capital expenditure has been financed by the government out of resources generated elsewhere by borrowings. That is the unfortunate thing. Government doesn't generate enough money, enough resources, financial resources to finance their investment plan, capital expenditure. Because that is deficit. So how do they finance their investment? Borrowing, domestic borrowings or the foreign borrowings. That is the problem. That is the problem. One of the problems. Current account deficit is a problem. You cannot finance the capital expenditure. At the same time, current account deficit can be interpreted as increase in transfer payment. Good thing. Pension, samurdhi, free midday meal, textbooks, uniforms, schemes, transfers. Then increase in salaries and wages of the government employee. Good thing. What is the importance of capital account? Capital account means investment, government investment. The capital account represents expenditure on account of the acquisition of the fixed asset by the government whose lifespan is more than 1 year. Less than 1 year current, more than 1 year capital. Since these constitute a part of the capital formation in the country, it adds to the total capital stock. Capital formation. Capital stock means what? Buildings, roads, hospitals, school buildings. Capital stock increases, total capital stock increases. When there was a tsunami, what happened? Huge damage to the houses during that coastal areas. Boats were destroyed. Government buildings and the private buildings were destroyed. The capital stock consists of not only the government, but also the whole private sector houses, buildings are there. No? So our capital stock went down during coastal area. Huge loss, human life and this physical life, the physical infrastructure damage. Then capital stock went down. Right? But the capital account means the acquiring fixed assets, hospitals, roads, schools. Then this then when government have these things, it adds to the capital stock. Capital stock increases. If there is a sudden shock, tsunami, capital stock decreases. Right? Sudden shock. And such investment in capital by the government leads to a high employment. Investment, if they can invest, they can generate employment, increase GDP. Right? Then this investment will generate future return. Highways were built, open in 2015-14. Nobody was using, very few the vehicles were there. Nowadays, you know, more and more people are using these highways. It generates income to the government. You should start the investment project today, spend money, develop this, but the return will come after a certain time. Understand? That's the thing. But the thing is, unfortunate thing is, the government to finance the capital expenditure, investment expenditure, we don't generate, our government does not generate enough funds. Our savings negative, government savings negative. That is the issue. What is the overall budget deficit? Overall deficit, earlier we discussed current account deficit, overall deficit. The overall deficit is the net outcome of both the current account and the capital account. In other words, the overall budget deficit is the excess of both current and capital expenditure over the revenue of the government. Total revenue minus total expenditure. What is total expenditure? Current expenditure plus capital expenditure. Current expenditure plus capital expenditure. Budget deficit. In Sri Lanka, government's budget has been continuously in deficit since independence. and the deficit as a percentage has been increasing in the recent past, indicating an unfavorable budgetary situation for the government. It is increasing. Think about a household, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, deficit is okay. But 10 years, 15 years, your budget, household budget cannot be financed, you have a problem. Sustainability issues there. But the government is a special, the case has a special advantage. They can create money, borrow money from other countries, even at a high interest rate. But individual households can't do that forever. Even government maintain, now they have been maintaining since independence, deficit. But we can't maintain 70, 75 years the deficit in the budget. No. You have to manage. Individual households can't, but government can do that. There are reasons. That is the nature of the government. Powers of the government permitted governments to maintain these deficits, right? But very huge difference, huge deficits means crisis. Greece, crisis. 12%, 15% of GDP, that's a crisis, government collapse, right? Bankrupt. Then these kind of problems are there, but the 4%, 5%, 7%, it's okay. We can manage with them. Right. This is an interesting point. Should a country run a budget surplus? Not necessarily. Even should the country run a current account surplus? We said not necessarily. This is because a continuous budget surplus would mean that the government is not paying back to the economy. If the government gets money, surplus, you are not investing. You are not paying back to the economy. Economy, what it has mobilized by way of taxes and other revenue. Because other people's money, you can't keep surpluses. You have to do something. It is your responsibility to invest those funds. This is simply a contraction in economic activities. If you keep maintaining surplus, that is not good. No investment projects, no employment. You don't contribute to GDP. No economic activities, which would eventually lead to unemployment, economic stagnation, and finally loss in output. This is the bad side of these surpluses. The government continuously maintains surplus. But at the same time, continuous deficit also bad. Hence, a surplus may be desirable once in a way, but not appropriate continuously. What is desirable is as far as possible to achieve a budgetary balance. Balanced budget. Budgetary balance. But it's difficult. It's very difficult. Difficult task. Especially the country in a developing country like Sri Lanka, it's very bad. Take COVID. The first season, the first round, government had to give 5,000, sometimes 10,000, 5,000 rupees for poor household. Unexpected, unanticipated shocks are coming to the budget. You can't balance the budget. But that point, I must say, US government, Australian government, Germany, they are giving transfers to the households, affected people, households. $1,400 check is going to every US households, those who are earning less than $75,000 per year. If you are earning more than $75,000, still you are getting some benefit, $1,000, $1,200 per month, like that. In Australia, they have these kind of transfer schemes, transfer payments. They are a rich country. They have current account surpluses. They have huge reserves. But we are a poor country. These kind of unanticipated shocks worsens our market, the economic situation. If we didn't have COVID, think about that. Our economy was really now developed. It is not coming to that this stage. Growth rate will be rising. Now we can start more and more investment projects, right? Then that is the problem. Maybe something to do with government inefficiencies in collection of taxes, as well as some other imposing of law and order, something. But COVID is a shock, unexpected shock to the world. It's a global shock. We couldn't avoid that. Please go through this 2021 March paper, recent paper. That was a question. Discuss the impact on Sri Lankan economy on COVID-20, COVID-19, right? So the discussion, think about it. It's actual problems, practical issues, right? They ask, worsen the economic situation, right? Okay. Now we have the few more slides. We'll discuss this, and next week I am going to discuss Central Bank annual report relevant two pages in the government budget, right? Numbers, you have to know the numbers in the government budget, and if we have time, we will start balance of payment, balance other account, right? Okay. Now we'll break up the next week. I'll finish these remaining slides and discuss some central bank the annual report tables from central bank annual report. Thank you. We'll stop now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. See you all next Saturday. Thanks. Yes. Thank you.